Welcome to the podcast, Neal Bawa. This guy's known as the mad scientist of multifamily. He's got a ton of great content out there. Really excited for this conversation today. So let's get right into it. Can you share a bit about your journey into real estate and how you got started?
Sure. So I'm a technologist, computer science degree, data science is my major, and I've had a successful technology career, ran a company for 14 years, built it up from about 10 people to about 400 people. When we sold it, I was a partner in the company. I live in California. I had the big fat tech salary and bonuses, and so I was paying, 50%, nearly 50% of my income to the man. And real estate seemed to be a natural segue just to get my tax bill down because I like to say this, real estate is America's best authorized, completely legal tax scam. And every billionaire, every 100 millionaire in America knows that it's authorized, knows that it cannot be changed. Depreciation is not a real estate benefit, but just so happens the biggest depreciation benefits are available in real estate. So it's an accounting benefit. Unless we change all forms of accounting, trillions of dollars worldwide, we can't take depreciation away as a benefit. In fact, no party has even ever attempted it. So it's legal, it works, it's authorized, and for somebody like me that was earning, a lot of money and then basically just giving up that money to the IRS, real estate seemed like a segue. So I did real estate from roughly 2003 to 2014 on my own. So for about 11 years, both building a large industrial buildings that I converted into use for my business, my tech business, and then also buying dozens and dozens of single families in areas that I wanted. And I ran a meetup, had about 40,000 people follow me, but didn't have a product because I was not in real estate. I was running a tech company. And then in 2013, when I sold my company, I had a massive multi-million-dollar tax bill that almost forced me to become a general partner and started my real estate career, which now is in its 10th year. So 1,000 investors, $325 million invested, all because of a bunch of weird and somewhat controversial, technological and data-driven ideas that I have.
And I think that's one thing that I'm super, just for the listeners, we met Neal at a conference. Both Brock and I have followed Neal for a very long time. But we at the conference, we heard Neal speak about a lot of these data-driven systems and processes and insights that he has. And that's something that we very much do believe that data is the new oil, and that the companies that can adopt and understand how to use that data to get better insights are going to fare better off versus companies that aren't thinking through things in that lens. So this is exciting for us. I'm not a technologist, but I definitely look forward to chatting through this stuff with you.
Well, I can say that you're wrong. Today, everybody's a technologist. I mean, what we're doing here would have cost several $100,000 in the 80s to do. And you basically are using a cloud service. It's called Riverside for those that are watching. And it's amazing, right? I mean, the quality of audio, the quality of video, the ability to cut in and out. I mean, we're all technologists, guys. We all look like wizards to technologists from the 80s.
I'll give you that. Absolutely. Fair point.
Before we continue, let me take 60 seconds to tell you about Multifamily University. Are you ready to take your real estate investing to the next level? Look no further than Multifamily University. Our comprehensive resources, including guest podcast appearances, educational webinars, the Real Estate Trends Toolkit, and the Location Magic course, are all designed to make smart investing easy and accessible. Plus, with no subscriptions, no upsells, you can trust that we're always looking out for your best interests. But don't take our word for it. Check out what our satisfied customer, Carlos M., had to say. Neal's presentation was filled with invaluable information that is not readily available to the average investor. This group takes you to the elite level of investing. Join the ranks of the elite with Multifamily University. Join us at multifamilyu.com and start investing from a place of knowledge today. Not only will you have access to a wealth of knowledge from industry experts, but you'll also be able to stay ahead of the game with our in-depth analysis of market trends and potential recessions or corrections. Invest with confidence and make informed decisions based on data, not gut feel. Don't miss out. Visit us at multifamilyu.com today or click the link in the description below. And now, back to the content.
When you made that decision, so you sold your tech company and you pivoted over to the real estate space, aside from the tax side of it, which is obviously a huge benefit, was there any other decision-making process that said, hey, I'm going to go into real estate instead of going out and starting another tech company?
Yes, I mean, there was a reason even bigger than taxation. I basically realized that for real estate is the largest single asset class in the world. So if you take all of the stock markets of all of the countries in the world and combine it, right? Combine all of the stock markets, and then you compare that to the world's real estate market. Real estate's about 3 times the size of the world's stock market. So it is the largest asset class in the world. And you would think that the largest single asset class in the world would be the most technologically advanced field. I found it to be incredibly backwards, right? When I was basically doing real estate on my own, I was just going around, going to meetup groups, going to conferences, talking to people, and asking questions that to me seem fairly simple, right? So one can say, sure, I'm a technologist, and these questions are related about how do you use technology to grow your real estate profits. But I think the answers that I got were, for the most part, rubbish. And so I'm finding that every year they become slightly less rubbish because there's more and more technology entering the space. But even in the last 10 years that I've been in this space, I'm far ahead of everybody else. Now, when I do that in a technological space, I'm ahead of people for 3 months or 6 months at the most. And then somebody comes along that works 23 hours a day and just basically runs roughshod all over me. And they're far ahead of me before I even know it. So I cannot maintain my edges when I do them in a technological space, which is obviously where my competence and my experience and my degree is. But I find that in real estate, actually, I'm able to maintain an edge by simply doing research and building more and more technology. I'm able to maintain an edge, and I've been able to maintain it for 10 years. No way I could have done that in tech. So to me, ironically, this is actually simpler to maintain a company with an edge than to do it where I came from in tech, where there's always 10 guys brighter than you, always 10 guys working twice as hard as you.
I love that. I think that's, one question someone asked me, a year or so ago as we were thinking through, our pivot kind of in real estate to a different, structure was, what's your edge, right? And ask that question because I think there's obviously real estate's very competitive. There's a lot of people doing it. And unless you have that edge, and it could be, the asset class you're investing in, the market you're investing in, or how you're implementing technology. But that's a question I found really valuable is, people that are in real estate listening, right? Like, what's your edge? What sets you, if you're buying 10-unit apartment buildings, what makes you better than the other guy that's buying 10-unit apartment buildings? And that's, so I think for you, it'd be your technology experience, right? Implementing that technology into your investing strategy.
So the answer actually is process. Technology, what is process? Process means that you create something that is repeatable, right? And then you find a way to repeat it consistently without you being involved in it on an everyday basis. So it's a process that is auditable. What that means is you've not just created a step-by-step system, you've also created a way so that people actually are following the system, and if they don't follow it, there's a penalty, right? That's what's known as a process. Now, technology is actually very useful to help processes work and to also help them work quickly. But there's many different ways to make the process work. I also very heavily use outsourcing. Outsourcing is the opposite of technology. Technology is you use code to do stuff, right? You use software programs to do stuff. Whereas outsourcing is you use people in the Philippines to do stuff. And I like to use both of them because I think that is even more powerful. So a lot of people like to say, Neal Bawa's edge is technology. Actually, Neal Bawa's edge is that he's absolutely obsessed about turning everything into a system and a process, and then absolutely obsessed about auditing that process to make sure it continues working without breaking, and then about improving them. And I use technology heavily to do that, but it isn't my secret sauce.
That's a good perspective, and that's like a lot of what we're trying to do in building out repeatable systems and processes and trying to figure out where we can automate it. That's why your content, I think, has been so relevant, and that's stuff that we're working on. Could you go into, just some of those, those key processes that you have in your business and how you've been able to continue to build those out?
I'll give you one that applies to everybody, and I'll also tell you exactly how I went about this process. So, as you can imagine, I have lots of buildings with thousands of tenants living in them. And I became concerned that most of my property managers and most of the regional property managers that were managing my properties simply didn't have the technical edge that was needed to stay ahead of all of my competitors when it came to leasing and tenant marketing activity. So I did what I have now been doing consistently for about 2 years. I go and speak with ChatGPT. So I use my phone, I tap on the ChatGPT app, and I just speak. I do this in a very generic fashion. I don't try to structure my thoughts. I just say stuff. It's so smart that even when it has typos in there, because I'm using, Apple voice typing and it makes mistakes, it still picks up the intent somehow. I don't know how it does that. It's genius, right? And I'm speaking for, call it 10 or 15 minutes. So I'm now going to give you a 60-second abbreviated version of what I said to my phone to get this system and processes started that I think everyone in the US should do, right? So I'm like, I talk to ChatGPT and I say, hey, I'm not comfortable with the technical competency of these people that are at my properties, and so I'd like to run an audit. And for the purposes of this audit, what I want to do is I want to hire a tenant marketing expert. I don't want to hire a real estate marketing expert. I want to hire a tenant marketing expert. And to do that, we're going to put something on LinkedIn. And then I went on and spent 1 minute describing what a tenant marketing expert knows how to do. For example, they know all the different search engines. They know which ones are better. They know how to get the most number of ads from them. They know what kind of ads get the maximum number of clicks. They know what kind of pictures get the maximum number of clicks, right? So they know all of this. So I'm describing it and probably going on for minutes, but here I'm giving you the short version, describing this person. And then I basically say, I want you to structure all of this stuff. The people that are going to be involved is my chief operations officer, my project manager who's in Pakistan, Afzal, is going to run this project. Kay is my recruiter, so she's going to recruit these people, and I'm the executive sponsor. Then I say stuff like, well, the kickoff is going to be on July 12th, where we'll sit down for 45 minutes and we'll review this document that ChatGPT is putting together, because this is not going to turn into a 10-page document because I'm talking and talking and talking and talking for 10 minutes, right? It's going to structure it all into sections and subsections and phase 1 and phase 2 and phase 3, because as I'm going, I'm saying phase 1 should be this, phase 2 should be this. These 4 properties are more key, so that's phase 1. These properties are well run or are over 95%, so they're going to be phase 2, blah, 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 blah. I'm going on and on and on and on and on. I'm completely unstructured, just talking to this software, and they're just throwing names of people in, throwing ideas about when the date should be, should there be a weekly checkpoint or a monthly checkpoint, blah, 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 blah. When I'm done, I say, hey, ChatGPT, can you please structure my thoughts? Make sure that you use phases, make sure that you use subsections, you define the team at the very beginning, and give me a definition of the task at the beginning so everyone understands what it is, and at the end show a conclusion of what it is that we're trying to achieve and in how much time. And by the way, as long as you're doing this, could you please convert it into Microsoft Word? It takes about 1 minute from the time that I've finished for ChatGPT to deliver a Word document. I open it, I make edits, I then go into my email, I attach the document, I put Afzal, my project manager, as the only person on top, and then one of my secret sauces is I put in assigned to Neal in the CC field. When I put in assigned to Neal in CC field, that email address converts this into a task in my project management software, Asana. Asana is my project management software, and by CCing it, not only does it convert it into a task, it takes the subject line, that becomes a title, it attaches the file that I'm putting in there, the file that ChatGPT created, and it puts Afzal as the person that the task is assigned to, because Afzal's a project manager. Now in the CC field, I put in all the other people, my COO, my recruiter, all of the other people that are in this particular project. And I basically, in the subject line, of course, is that whatever I want the title in Asana to be. So in this case, hire a tenant marketing expert to audit my properties is what's in the subject line. And then in the text, it is, please read this. Afzal, please note it has an immediate action item for you, which basically is to schedule the launch meeting, which would happen later that day, right? And that's it. I go into the launch meeting because Afzal's already organized it. I sit down there. I walk through the document. I answer a bunch of questions for people. And then I basically turn it over to Afzal, who turns it into 40 or 50 or 100 tasks that are in Asana. And we have a conversation on what are the dates for this? Well, we need to finish the recruiting of this person by a week. We need to get the LinkedIn post up, which, by the way, has been provided by ChatGPT. So the bottom of this document, I say, hey, can you give me a LinkedIn post for what it is that I'm trying to do? Contract person, hiring $40 an hour or $60 an hour, whatever it is. So the very first task that we do is we post this person, this tenant marketing expert, on LinkedIn. And immediately we'll start getting people. Vast majority of the people that we get are not tenant marketing experts. Maybe they're leasing agents or whatever. So we ignore their resumes and we find the person that has worked and has actually built tenant marketing systems for large companies. Maybe they work for a property manager that's managing 50,000 units. And so they do it on a full-time basis. And now they want to earn something on the side, right? This is just an example.
Yes.
Right? Yeah. But I don't want you to pay any attention to my example. I want you to pay attention to my process, right? So this entire process that I just described takes from the time I get the idea to the time when it has passed on to other people who know how to do their job is roughly 15 minutes. Now, of course, I still have to go to the 45-minute kickoff meeting, but I don't go to any other meetings because my chief operations officer's job is to run the company. It is my job to strategically move the company forward. It's her job to run the company. So I'm not going to be in any meetings except the kickoff. I'm going to answer questions in the kickoff. And then because I've already told people how often the touch base meetings would be, Afzal's going to set up those meetings. Anna's going to drive those meetings. She's my COO. And this stuff will get done. It may get done a month later than I wanted it to. But the fact is I only spent 20 minutes plus 45 minutes in a kickoff meeting. And an expert, marketing expert, is now going to spend months beating up my property managers and my regional property managers saying, do you realize that you're not running these ads? Do you realize that this lead has come in 3 days ago and nobody has called this person? Do you realize that we require you to text 3 times and call 3 times within the first 24 hours and you're failing 100% of the time? All of this stuff happens because I talked for 10 minutes into ChatGPT. Because I'm saying things like that. I'm saying that our requirement for properties is 3 text messages within 48 hours, 3 phone calls within 48 hours. You, as the marketing expert, will go and audit it. You will look in AppFolio. You will look in Yardi, RealPage, whatever it is, and you will tell me what percentage of the time is this property failing. And by the way, you will come back and reconduct that audit 30 days later to see if there's improvement at this property.
I love that example, and I think it's really highlights, setting up the process for time saving, right? I think that could take, if you did it manually, might take you 5 hours, right? And if you have to do that process once a month and you're doing it manually, that's 5 hours a month. You take the time to set up that process. Now it's 15 minutes a month. And it's just, you implement across your entire business.
Exactly.
It allows you to scale so much quicker.
Like you were saying, don't pay attention to the end goal of hiring a tenant marketing rep. You're doing this sort of same process for, I presume, finding deals, raising capital, whatever it is that you think can strategically move the business forward.
It's just the idea of the day, right? The key is there is a system and a process. Everyone knows that when I issue these kinds of orders, they come in a specific format from ChatGPT. And by the way, because we have a paid account of ChatGPT, we've uploaded all the information about our company into ChatGPT's memory. This is a feature of ChatGPT. So it knows who we are. It knows who I am. So it knows that I'm the CEO of the company. It knows my name. So I don't, it doesn't misspell my name because it knows it. It's in the memory. What does a company do? Who are the people? Who are the key players? It knows the name of my project manager. So even if I didn't put in the name of the project manager when I was renting to it, it would put in Afzal because it knows. That's in the memory.
So what about, with talking about ChatGPT and AI, internal processes, where do you see more so like overall from an entire real estate industry perspective, AI changing?
It's hard to give you an answer to that question because we're still at an early stage. So for the moment, the biggest implementation of artificial intelligence in real estate has been primarily in the leasing, and creating chatbots for leasing. And that area is pretty advanced and is quite impressive. Elise is one of my favorites. Elise AI, ELISE AI is really good. But now what's happening is, all of the property management companies are creating their own chatbots. So, AppFolio has one and Yardi has one and Entrada has one and RealPage has one. So they're all doing their own. So I don't know how that's going to play out. But that seems to be one of the biggest uses. Now, within 12 months, we are going to have AI picking up phones at properties. I see no role for leasing agents. I think the moment ChatGPT 4.0 releases its new version of the conversational AI that they've been showing off on YouTube for about 3 months now. So if you haven't watched those videos, they're fascinating. The moment conversational AI becomes available as an API, as an application programming interface for other people to program it and extend it, basically the same people that are using that chatbot are going to take that audio portion and say, hey, we're going to pick up your phones. So I expect that 5 years from now, no leasing agent in America will pick up phones. The phones will be picked up by AI. We're not there yet because this stuff is going to take several years to develop, but it's not going to take 5 years to develop. In 2 years, all of my properties, the phones will be picked up by AI. AI will have a conversation. It'll talk. It'll say I'm an AI, but it'll do a much better job of talking with you than any leasing agent, and it'll do it 24 hours a day. And it'll basically schedule you, and it'll send you an email and send you a text message, and it'll do all of those things. So I anticipate that leasing agent costs in the United States will decline by potentially between 50 and 75% over the next 5 years. That is the biggest, right? Obviously, we can talk about money raising, and you guys saw me present in front of 1,500 people about how I'm using technology for money raising. So most people that go to fund launch are looking to raise money. So I showed you how to do that. But now we're talking about systems and processes, and now I'm talking about, okay, how do we use it for leasing? And the answer is the technology is going to develop. It's not going to be anything Neal Bawa does. It's not going to be me being special or my AI being better than yours. None of that stuff is going to happen. I'm just going to use the tools faster and better than people, and then I'm going to make sure I enforce them. So my AI will be different from your AI only in that I will conduct audits using human beings who are calling from the Philippines to make sure that the AI is doing its job. And the AI is not saying random stupid things, which AI tends to do if you're not careful.
Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it does. So another thing that you talk about a lot, right, is spotting data trends to identify opportunity. So I know there's probably a lot that can get packed into this question, but at a high level, or maybe your favorite part of this question, what are some of the key real estate trends you're seeing right now?
I'm going to tie this back to something that you guys are doing. I know that you guys are working on an industrial fund, right? So I'm going to tie this back to that. So the key trends that are affecting all real estate in the United States, doesn't matter if it's industrial or multifamily or single family, are things that are pulling against each other. Okay, so the first trend is the United States population growth is slowing dramatically and radically. So back around maybe 2011, 2012, before it slowed, our population growth was close to 1% a year. So call it 0.6, 0.7%. And now we are at 0.32% a year, right? So it's slowed so dramatically over the last 10 years that it's more than half. That growth level is less than 50% of what it was, just in 2012. So this means that all of our predictions of real estate shortages, we need 4.7 million units. Some people say 6 million. Some people say 1.8 million. I think anybody that talks about the 4 or 6 million number is simply using population numbers from a decade ago. They're not using population numbers from now. So the first thing that you should know is by 2030, most of our real estate shortages will be solved, right? So real estate reaches equilibrium. We haven't had to deal with this at all since the 2008 crash, obviously when real estate came back out of the 2008 crash. Since then, there's always been shortages. Since then, we've always been the pole position. We get to stay there until roughly 2030, and then we get into equilibrium. And you might say, how's that possible? There's this shortage of real estate. There's millions of units. Well, we're building this year we're building 1.6 million units, 1 million single family and 600,000 multifamily. So it's not like we're not building, we're adding stock, but we usually don't add enough stock. It doesn't keep up with the demand. So I don't consider real estate to be any different from selling toothbrushes. Right now, when you sell a toothbrush, you can only sell it at a certain price. You can't sell it 10% more than that because the market has what is known as perfect competition. Perfect competition. And perfect competition is created by Amazon, right? And Walmart. And so as a result, you can only sell it for a certain price. With real estate, we've had an advantage, and we get to keep that advantage for, call it, another 6 years. And then at that point, real estate becomes commoditized because we've quote unquote caught up because of this massive decline in population growth. However, for the moment, what's protecting us is the ridiculously large amount of immigration coming in from the southern border. So with so many people coming in from the southern border, we've sort of papered over the big problem for now. As you know, if the Republican wins, that go away. If the Democrats win, it slows down because most Democrats now think that there's too many people coming from the from the border. So it slows down anyway, right? Both parties, it slows down. So you can only paper this over for the next year or two. You can't really paper over the problem for the next decade. So that's the first trend is we need to understand that real estate shortages will not last forever. Second, the second big thing that's happening in the world is the World Economic Order, which was created by the United States in 1945, is breaking down. The order basically said that the United States would patrol the world's oceans. We would create peace so that no pirates would, grab ships, and we would basically protect all sea traffic worldwide. We would protect everything from a Chinese freighter to a Russian freighter that was carrying goods, and it has worked wonderfully. There has been no piracy in the high seas of note, except for some little dabbling recently by the Houthis. There has been no piracy on the high seas. America has made sure that the seas are open, and because of that, we have incredible amount of worldwide trade, right? I mean, you might actually pick up a phone and not realize that the stuff in this phone is actually coming from 18 different cities. 18 different cities in 6 different countries, and that's perfectly normal, including the cover, right? So that worldwide trade is beginning to break down because it's very likely that we're going to get into a shooting war with China over the next 4 to 5 years. Now, as a result, and here's where Brock is going to be happy, as a result, we are going to see a change in the way we build stuff in the world. And it's going to come through a series of shocks. So obviously, COVID was a shock to the world system. We're going to see other supply shocks, and they're going to come in the next 5 to 10 years. And as a result, we're going to see a lot of nearshoring, a lot of onshoring, and less offshoring. So right now, China is the factory of the world. Yes, we could say, India, Vietnam, yes, but really, China is the factory of the world. And that just is not going to continue. It's already beginning to reverse. The percentage of world goods made in China is reducing every year already. So it's been reducing since 2015. 2015 was a peak where China was really the world's factory, and now every year that number goes down a little bit in terms of percentage, but it needs to go down a heck of a lot more. So what needs to happen and what is going to happen is we are going to need to bring manufacturing back. And when we say that, it doesn't mean that all of it comes back to, let's say, Ohio or the Midwest. The Midwest is the best positioned for it to come back because there's a lot of industrial space, a lot of infrastructure, a lot of power. It's already set up for it. But actually, the vast majority of nearshoring will not come to the United States. It will go to Mexico. Why? Because Mexico has much cheaper labor than China. This is not well known. People think that Chinese labor is cheaper than Mexico. It's not even close. It's not even close. Chinese labor has been more expensive than Mexico for a decade, right? And it's getting more expensive every year because Chinese per hour salaries are growing way faster than Mexico. So Mexico becomes our biggest strategic partner. We are going to need massive amounts of warehousing space because of this nearshoring and onshoring and because of AI. Just because of artificial intelligence, we're going to need warehouses in the 100 million square feet range just in the next 3 years, right? Because AI is the most important technological development in the history of mankind, right? Nothing that we've done so far comes close to what AI is going to do. And we're going to need massive amounts of electricity and massive amounts of warehouse spaces to put in hundreds of millions of servers. That space doesn't exist. So industrial is really a good play, especially in the Midwest where industrial space is pretty cheap. The other area where I think industrial is going to be phenomenal is going to be the freeway that runs between the city of San Antonio and the Mexican city of Monterrey. Okay, so there's only one way to get stuff from Mexico to the United States, one big freeway, right? And it runs from the city of Monterrey, which is sort of their manufacturing hub. So you can call it their Ohio if you want to call it that. And then San Antonio, which is not in any way special except for the fact the freeway runs to it, right? So now you have this 300-mile or maybe 400-mile stretch of freeway. And on the San Antonio side, right, maybe 10, 20, 30 miles from the city, we're going to need an absolute gargantuan shit ton of industrial warehousing, right? Because the Mexicans already built their stuff. But because of the way the Mexican system works, we still have to take a bunch of their stuff and do stuff with it on our side for tariff reasons, taxation reasons, and a bunch of other technology reasons. There's just some stuff that Mexico doesn't do well that we have to do on our side. Well, with really only one freeway. There is a second freeway, by the way, but the infrastructure is not there, right? So that's sort of from the Houston side going down into Mexico. But the one from the San Antonio side is where all the traffic is. I think the freeway is called 34. That freeway goes through the border and goes to the city of Monterey. That area, the industrial development that that area will see in the next 10 years, it just boggles the mind. Entire cities will be created along that freeway.
Tell you what, I'd love to have you on my investor calls with me.
Well, you can use this clip. I give you rights to use this clip on your investor calls.
Thank you very much. Hey, where do you do a lot of your research on? And I would say this: we talk about this. It's in our fund thesis: the onshoring, nearshoring, reshoring movement, the supply chain disruptions. A lot of this, we're not as deep on the research, but I want to genuinely want to sit and study this even more. I mean, this is something that we've been kind of feeling. We sort of stumbled into industrial, and then the more that we looked into it, the more that we realized like this feels like a really good spot to be in right now for us in our business, in our market. It's not to say I don't love multifamily. We have multifamily. We've got some self-storage, but what we've kind of really focused in on industrial going forward. So where do you get all of your information from?
Well, when you're trying to develop a thesis, you first need to figure out the person that's done much more research than you. So in this case, my thesis around the change in the world order, which also obviously leads to the industrial piece, comes from a guy named Peter Zeihan. That's Peter, Zeihan. Peter is absolutely brilliant, and he releases a video every day, 365 days a year, talking about the world geopolitical order. And one of the key things that he talks about is the breakdown of the world order and the nearshoring, onshoring that is necessary as the world order changes. In case anyone watching is getting anxious, just so you know, the United States comes out incredibly strong on the other side of this in about 20 years. Insanely strong, absolutely shockingly strong. And in case you want to know what that means, go watch Peter Zeihan's YouTube channel or read the book that he just published. So one of the most brilliant people in the world is Peter Zeihan. So my thesis comes from him. Obviously, as you can imagine, I've read all of his books, and I watch that daily 3 to 4 minute video. I've watched it every year for many, many, many years. And that gives me a massive amount of information. But then you basically take his thesis and you say, okay, if he says Mexico, you can ask ChatGPT, where does Mexico make its stuff? Which cities on the Mexican side are growing the most? And the answer is Monterey. I mean, Monterey is by far the big leader. And then you just look it up on a map and you say, so if I wanted to get stuff from Monterey and I wanted to get it to the United States, how many different choices do I have? Well, there's only one freeway, right? So it has to all come along that freeway. So I think, so you take a thesis and then you ask a bunch of questions and then you figure out the answers to those questions. This can be applied to pretty much anything. I'm just giving you the industrial example because you guys are interested in industrial.
So you mentioned the year 2030 a few times. Why is that year so important? Like what's changed in that year?
Well, firstly, our growth rates, if they continue to slow that's the point at which our millennials would have basically produced most of the babies that they're going to produce. So beyond 2030, the United States just is going to produce a lot less babies, a lot less kids. It's already producing less kids, but actually for tenant purposes, we want those kids to be not a baby, but we want them to be 10, 15, 16 years old, so they need their own room, right? Because the more rooms that are needed, the more units you need. So bottom line is that as we look at the change in the world order, which will happen over the next 6 to 7 years, and there's many good things that are part of this change of the world order, many bad things, definitely significant supply chain disruptions which may happen more than once. So one time it's going to be whenever the United States faces off against China over Taiwan, which is inevitable, but also could be other events similar to COVID that disrupts supply chains. So 2030 just seems to be a number that a lot of smart people have come up with, not me. And so I just use that date.
Okay. So I got a question, shifting gears a little bit, but on the topic of successful investments that were driven by data. Can you give an example of a deal you did that was, driven by this trend forecast or spotting this opportunity that ultimately made it successful?
Yeah, I'm a multifamily guy, but I did a self-storage deal, and I did it in a state that I constantly, not a state, but a city that I constantly tend to bash, and that's Memphis, Tennessee. So Tennessee has four large cities. So there's Nashville, Knoxville, Chattanooga, and Memphis. Memphis is sort of number three in that list, used to be number two. And so people ask me, hey, do you want to invest in Tennessee? The answer is sure. Chattanooga is good, Nashville's good, Knoxville. And they're like, what about Memphis? Well, the answer is Memphis sucks because it loses population and has very high crime. And so, and for that reason, a lot of institutionals don't invest in it. I'm not interested in buying a multifamily property in Memphis, but that doesn't make me blind to the opportunity that population reduction sometimes creates. So if there's population reduction, a bunch of people just simply won't invest. But I'm data driven. I'm not saying I will invest or won't invest. I'm just looking at the data. I came across a report that said that from a self-storage perspective, Memphis had a very, very small amount of self-storage. Self-storage is basically based on how many people of a certain income live in a certain area. And so there's these numbers that you apply and you say, okay, well, I want to be more than 1,000 people per self-storage unit or higher than that number. Well, Memphis's number was much, much, much higher than any other market that I'd seen, right? So I became very interested in that market. I reached out to somebody that was a self-storage expert. I'm not. I have no intention of being one. And I went to them and said, here's the data that looks really, really compelling. Could you make some phone calls? And they're like, yeah, we're actually looking at this area already, and we agree with you. Would you provide the equity? And I said, yeah, that's fine. I'll provide all of the equity if you find a property. And so we went and looked at a property, but we looked at a bunch of properties, but we found one in Memphis, 3-year project. We more than doubled the investor's money, so 2.5x, because the person that owned it was, a family owner. They had no idea what they should be charging. They had no idea what the value of that property was. And there was a piece of land next to it. So on that piece of land, we built carports with solar. And we got two benefits. The carports basically now have RVs in them, and we rent those out. So we massively increased our profit with only a few months of construction because carports are easy to build. And then on those carports, we saved a massive amount of taxes by putting solar on carport. Solar on carport has a very high tax rebate. So you build a carport, you stick solar on top of it, and then you use the solar for EV charging on the carports. So now we have both EVs and RVs parked there. We're charging 44 cents a kilowatt hour, where our cost of generation is 6 cents a kilowatt hour. We're getting massive tax rebates because we installed solar. And the carports were quick to install on land that was already sitting there that came for free with the property. Boom. Data.
That is a home run. It's definitely a home run. Yeah.
So if we take another step back, so for listeners that are, clearly what you're talking about, and I could listen to you talk all day, man. So I appreciate that. But, for someone just sort of starting out, or maybe they've got a couple of, properties or duplexes and they want to scale up, in your, technologist lens in building systems and processes, how would you go about building or scaling a real estate company today?
All you have to do is get one idea out of your head. And that idea is pervasive, it's toxic, and it's completely untrue. People say, Neal Bawa is running $1 billion portfolio. He needs all this technology. He has people. He has, he has the incentive to do this. When I have 2 units or 3 units, I don't need this, or I can't do this. You need it, and you can do it. Technology today is 100x easier than it used to be. Stuff that I used to build as an engineer back in the 90s in India at Larsen and Toubro now costs $25 a month and a few clicks on the internet. You're freaking lazy if you think that you can't do it. And now you have this amazing tool called ChatGPT. I speak to it 20 times a day. It's way smarter than I am. And I'm just glad for its use. And I paid $20 a month for this person that knows almost everything about almost everything. So from my perspective, when people basically say that I'm too small to build systems and processes, that is just a stupid idea. There is no minimum requirement and minimum time to start building systems, because building systems is a mindset, right? I measure everything I do in my life. I measure how often I eat. I measure what I eat. I measure what I drink. I measure how often I have sex. All of these things are important to me because it's not about the benefit I'm getting from measuring. It is about the mindset that you can only manage what you can measure. And that data beats gut feel by a million miles. These are my two mantras. Data beats gut feel by a million miles. And you can only manage what you can measure. So you shouldn't just be managing things at work. You should be managing your life by numbers. I know it's not sexy, but if you see the results, they're beyond sexy.
Yeah, I mean, from like a health perspective, I know Brock has the Aura Ring. I've had a Garmin watch for the last 5+ years. I sleep with it on. I'm trying to embody this mindset more and more and more in my personal life, and as well as in business. So I completely agree that it is more of a mindset. I haven't thought of it that way, but if you can build systems and collect data throughout everything in your life, you're going to be much more positioned, better to capitalize on different trends or capitalize on different things because you have the data. And as you said, it beats gut feel by a long shot.
Absolutely. I mean, one way to start is on Saturday, pick a time, right? Maybe, if you work Saturdays, pick Sunday. And it's only 15 minutes. And initially, all you're doing is you're making a list. So you can use your phone, whatever, Apple Notes, Samsung Notes, whatever it is. And all you're doing is first you're making a list of all the things that if they were optimized, you would make more money or have more time. Just a list, nothing else. You're not trying to do anything beyond that list. And for the first few weeks, you're going to be disciplined and you're not going to start doing anything about this list. You're just going to make a list as big as you can. Look at everything, your rental portfolio, what you want to do, tutoring your kids at school. I mean, anything and everything. Just what are the things that could give you time or money? After a few weeks, when you're completely saturated, you're going to ask yourself the question, which of these items, one item, would I pick? Just a single item would I pick if I wanted to work on it? Once you've answered that question, you're going to ask the next question, which is, what can I apply in terms of my time, my technology, or my process to make this one thing better? And then you're going to go work on that. And you're going to make sure that every Saturday you sit down for 15 minutes. It's 15 minutes a week. Everybody has it. And you're going to work on that one thing. And you might say, why not an hour? Don't do it. You're trying to build a habit. You're not trying to spend hours and hours doing something once. That's worthless. You're trying to make sure that this 15 minutes is just for you to optimize all aspects of your life and portfolio. And trust me, 15 minutes a week, every week is more than enough. It's more than enough. So I'm not asking you to make it 16 minutes. I'm not asking you to make it an hour. Just 15, but it has to be every single Saturday of the goddamn year.
That's a golden nugget right there, just around life optimization, and I think that is a great nugget for people that are really listening here and want to build a life of health, wealth, and happiness. The more that you can free up time through systems and technology and processes, the more you can do more, spend more time with your family, or do more of what you want to do. And so that's a great one.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, I think, and our investors see it. If you go to our website, growcapitus.com, doesn't have a W in it, so GROCAPITUS.com, and click on the reviews, you'll notice that almost every review is about our systems and processes. Now, obviously, our track record is on the homepage, and let me just tell you, it's pretty awesome. But I don't care about that. I really care about the fact that almost all of my reviews from investors are about systems, processes, method, data. And yes, those people mentioned you doubled my money in 2 or 3 years. I'm sure they're happy about it. But really, the reviews are about our process, and that's what we're proud of. Track records automatically happen.
Wow.
Awesome. Yeah. So before we head in, we have a couple of kind of rounding questions at the end. Before we head into that, I'd like to know what is, let's use the next 5 years. What does the next 5 years look like for you? What are you most excited about? What are you pursuing? What does that look like for you?
So, irrespective of what I mentioned to you for real estate in terms of shortages, the United States is going to face an enormous shortage of many different kinds of real estate, right? And I mentioned industrial, so you know about that already. I think it is impossible for us to now build cheap single-family homes in America. Very few people build starter homes because there's no profit. Everyone builds for the mid-market, and fine, you can continue serving the mid-market. That's good. That's a worthy goal too. But what about the people making 60 to 85K in America? If you're earning 60 to 85K, when you look at the mortgage, you can't qualify for any starter home in any state in America, maybe some part of Detroit. But other than that, you're screwed. You just cannot buy. So since COVID, home prices are up 44%, mortgages have doubled. So the average mortgage payment is up 111%, incomes are up 19%. Effectively, we've marooned 20 million American families that can never buy a home. They can never buy a home. So I'm asking myself, and I've been asking myself this before COVID, and so my timing was great. I basically said, what happens? Back then it was 8 million families. Since COVID, it's now the numbers moved up to 20 million families. What happens to these people? They have good incomes, 60 to 85K, which may not be a lot of money in San Francisco, but it is a lot of money in many parts of the US. What can I give them that's more than an apartment? Because the standard answer is let them go live in old apartments. My question was, can I give them something better? And I was obsessed with that idea. It took me years. I even built an entire community just to try out my ideas. And the answer is yes. I can build brand new 9-foot ceiling townhomes. You know, apartments have 8-foot ceilings, right? 9 foot is much better. With granite countertops, 3 bedrooms for $1,800 a month in rent. That's $22,000 a year, which means that if your income is 66 grand, 1/3 of that is 22,000, you can afford it, right? The catch, of course, is where can I build these where they can still be very profitable with $1,800 a month in rent? And the answer is out of 1,016 cities and 323 metros, the math only works in 6 places. 6 out of 1,016. Because in every other place, either the construction costs are too high, or the land is too expensive, or the property taxes are too high, or the insurance is too high, or something else is too high. Labor cost, right? So only in 6 cities, my data shows the math works. And so what I decided to do was to invite my investors, 346 of them, into a mission. And this is a decade-long mission. We call it Mission 10K.